Welcome, everybody. This is the Seminar Success Zone. My name is Stephanie Peterson, and I'm joined here by my good friend, Matt Hicken. I
Hey.
am the head of growth here at Bill Good Marketing, and my job is basically to help advisors find the right growth solutions to reach their goals. So I'm really excited to share this topic with you today. Seminars is one of the most exciting and challenging strategies that you can implement to reach your goals. But as Matt will cover today, it doesn't have to be as challenging if you know the important factors to help ensure that you get your statistics in the success zone. So, Matt, I'm really excited that he's here and joining us. He's going to be sharing a lot of the seminar success that he experienced as an advisor and the practice manager of a very successful practice who they did run seminars as a part of their massive growth strategy. They went from 25 million in assets under management to just over 550 million in under 14 years. And I'm going to let Matt introduce himself a little bit now too. Matt?
Yeah, so there's that part of my career. I've been I worked at Bill Good, then out in the industry, and now back at Bill Good Marketing. Been in here for a total of 23 years in this industry, really helping and focusing on advisors growing and then taking great care of their clients. And so I since being back, I've traveled all around the country, seen seminars, watched them, helped with presentations, helped put together invitations that get results. So I'm looking forward to talking through all the different aspects of these seminars and how to make them better and actually a good ROI rather than just a big expense.
Yeah, I love that. And also, Matt has been coaching a lot of our top advisors, a lot of the top producers on our system, and has helped many who have implemented seminars, help them implement them in such a way that they get a really high ROI. So he's going to share a lot of those tips and tricks from his own experience, and then also coaching the advisors that he has helped implement as well. So before we dive into that subject, though, there's just a couple of things I want to mention. First, for those of you who don't know Bill Good Marketing, I know a lot of you who have joined us today are familiar with us, but for those that aren't, our main purpose is to help advisors double production or work half as much, or any other combination of more time and more money that you may be wanting. And we really want to help good advisors help more good people. So, seminar marketing is one of those strategies that helps you get out and educate and help your community better understand finances and how to reach their financial goals. But there's a lot more that we can help with. We're going to share a lot of strategy today. And we do that because we want to help. That said, one of the best ways we help is we share strategy, but we sell implementation. So if you've found that you struggle in implementing anything that we're going to be recommending today, or if you've had any trouble with your seminars, make sure to request time after to speak with a consultant about your goals, and we can help map out the support solutions that will help you get the success that we've seen. That said, um, this webinar is for you. So if you have any questions, we do have a chat box. Put your questions in the chat box and we'll incorporate them into the conversation as we go. Also, because this is for you, we want to show you how much we appreciate you and the time that you're spending with us here today. We'll be together for about an hour, and at the end of that time, we will provide you with a goodie bag. If you stay to the end of the webinar and fill out our survey, which is a seminar best practice, by the way, also a webinar best practice. Take a few minutes to fill out the survey, and at the end of that, you'll get a goodie bag, which is the Seminar Success Zone Guidebook. This is 33 pages of tips, tricks, and best practices to turn your seminars into an AUM generating machine, which we have seen some phenomenal success with that. One of my favorite stories is an advisor who went from 0 to 100 million in 2 years just through seminar marketing. So there's a lot of success to be had, and this guidebook will give you the outline for that success. That said, why don't we jump into it? So, Matt,
Mhm.
this really is going to be your story. I want to hear all that you know about seminars. Now, we get a lot of questions from advisors. So, mostly what I'd like to do is ask you the most common questions that I hear and get your take on what you're seeing working right now. That's what
Perfect.
most advisors want to know is what's working now. So, While many factors can influence, one of the first questions is, there are many factors that can influence the number of people who attend your seminar. What would you say are the three most important factors?
Yeah. So number one is very first off the headline, and it's that attention getter. I had this marketing professor way back in college, and he taught me this principle. He was the head of marketing for all of South America for a big corporation, and he um, he taught this principle and the fact that it applies to everything. And I've looked at it throughout my career, and it works. And it's the AIDA principle, which is you get attention, you increase interest, you increase desire, and then you have a call to action. And that is what we're trying to do, is capture attention with that headline. That attention is what's going to get people to be involved. So that's number one, is the headline. You have to have a catchy headline. And number two is the style of invitation. I've seen everything from just random emails to phone calls to wedding style invites to trifolds to postcards to just about everything, even just straight out a letter as an invitation. Varying styles will work in different markets with different audiences. And then the final thing is location, right? If I'm going to capture their attention and increase their interest in attending this seminar, I have to have a location that's going to help in that. So that's one of the things that you have to battle to overcome when you're doing a webinar, right? Because the interest in attending something either at lunchtime or in the evening online is a little bit more daunting. Your headline really has to grip. Your bullet points really have to get their interest peaked in order for them to say, yeah, I'm going to log in and stare at my computer screen for a half hour while you talk. So you're kind of having setting up a bar to jump over. Whereas if I'm asking them for a nice steak dinner, it's a little bit easier to get people to say, oh yeah, I'm for that.
Got it. Good. So, headlines, I know you talked about the AIDA principle. Can you tell me a bit more about good headlines? Do you have an example of a good headline?
Yeah. So what's fascinating to me is numbers in a headline is always great, right? And I kind of want to come back to a little bit about how you go about creating the headline, because obviously the very first thing you have to do is have a good topic, right? And the topic of it is what's going to capture that attention. And people usually ask, okay, well, what are the topics that draw in the biggest interest? And the key to, I mean, short answer to this is there's three, right? So it's number one is retirement income, or income throughout your retirement life. Number two is estate strategies. You could say the seven estate planning mistakes and how to avoid them. And then number three is tax strategies, right? So the top tax strategies the wealthy are using today, something along those lines. Um, Adding a number to the headline helps. Now, that being said, those are the three big broad topics. The longer answer is the fact that as you are working with your clients, as you're helping those top clients that really meet that ideal level of client that you're looking for, they are facing obstacles. There are things that you've helped them overcome. Those things that you've helped them overcome or were top of mind for them, most likely all of their friends or family, others that are in a similar position, which similar position, I mean, your ideal client, are also facing those obstacles. So if you can write up a list of the obstacles your ideal clients are facing, and how you have helped uniquely help them overcome those obstacles, then that should help you with a list of potential topics, right? So if you help your common client, in fact, one of the things that I see is that group from 5 to 10 million, one of the obstacles that they often face is budgeting, right? They've been getting all this money, all the money's coming in. Maybe they're running a business, and there's a lot of expense to that. There's a lot of different ancillary expenses that are going on, but at the same time, they are making a decent amount of money, which means that, hey, let's go enjoy it. And so they start doing that, and they don't think about the savings. They don't think about the long-term things. And so budgeting becomes a bit of a problem. And it's usually a main issue with one of the spouses versus both. But that being said, that is an attention getter, right? And I can go out and create a headline with, okay, let me think through the stories. What are some of the things I've helped them overcome? How have I done this? What are the steps? And then it's the 5 steps to creating a powerful budget. And there's my headline. You can use different AI sources to help you get creative. um, I personally have yet to have AI actually give me the actual headline that I would ever use, but for a client, but it has spurred on some words, some ideas of structure for the sentence, that does help the creative juices flow a little bit more and get headlines. And so that's to me the best way to go about it. Hopefully that answers your question, Steph.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely helps. And so you're talking about the main obstacles that you're helping your top and ideal clients solve, right? Those
Yeah.
being the main topics.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of ideal clients, let's say I'm an advisor, what kind of ideal clients might I have that would mean seminars is a good solution for me? Or what
Yeah.
ideal clients do seminars attract? Right? What
Yeah.
is it
If
work
you're
best?
if you're shooting for clients anywhere in the asset range of 250,000 to 2 million, that's typically a good area to go in for seminars. Once you get above the 2 million, I have seen a significant reduction in response rates. So you're having to send out thousands and thousands of invites in order to get people to come in the room. What we're kind of seeing right now, as far as numbers go, is you're getting a zero point 0.6 to 1% response rate in that 250,000 to probably 750,000 assets range. And then from the 750 to a million, you're down to 0.5%. And what I've seen is it starts to go above 2 million. And that's where we're down on that quarter to 0.15%. So you can do the math. If I'm trying to fill a room of 20 to 25 people, I have to send out a lot of letters and invites to get that if I'm at that 0.1% coming out. So it's just a harder group to get to the seminar. But if you're in that 250 to 2 million range, that's a perfect thing to go for. The other thing is you're looking for, and it's mainly just because they have a lot of obstacles that are coming up, right? They've got a lot of things that they're facing that they have to now deal with. Maybe they didn't before. I think the books out there, the studies show that some of the top millionaires, most common millionaires, the professions they're in are not ones where they would be knowledgeable on finance, right? They're not even thinking that they're wealthy is the big thing, and so they have all these problems, right? Which the money causes, not even benefits, but problems that you can help them overcome and get their attention in a seminar to come and take a look at that. I do want to mention one other thing on this too, as far as the topic and the headline goes, um, and that's this thought with begin with the end in mind, right? And we'll talk about this further, but if so, for example, back in the 2020 early 2000s 2000 teens, uh, great seminar that everybody was running, and still a lot of run it, and it's not bad, but it's the social security seminars, and there's a lot of other groups out there that have the social security seminars. um, that's great, right? And the entire point of that seminar and the big push that everybody was going for was doing a maximization of your social security analysis. Great. How do you become the guide in their entire financial life for the rest of their life by offering a social security maximization analysis? So those that have run that seminar in the past, maybe you can jump in the chat and comment, but the idea was, and you probably experienced this, okay, well, you bring them in, you do the social security analysis, and then you've got to try to drum up the rest of the conversation about all their investments and other parts of their financial life. And it was a bit of a leap. So what I've seen be successful is those that were running that seminar, they've transitioned it. It's still Social Security to get the attention, right? Again, attention and interest. I'm trying to get them out there, but they're increasing their desire for this because what they're telling them, and this is the point, right? With a Social Security income, what I'm looking for is to maximize how much is in my pocket for me to spend on my needs and wants in retirement. So in order to do that, in order to maximize Social Security, I also have to understand what is their tax situation, what do their investment situation look like, when am I going to pull that Social Security, what options do I have for other income and other aspects. I need all of that information. So the pitch throughout your presentation is and throughout the even the invite itself, when the bullet points, I'm going to be pushing the fact that yeah, social security maximization is a thing. We're going to talk about that and address it and give you some key points, but ultimately it's a piece of your overall retirement income strategy, which is what we do and what we specialize in. When you come in and meet with us, that's what we're going to go over with you is your retirement income strategy. And that's a much shorter step to then managing their assets, right? So begin with that end in mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it really sounds like you start with identifying who your ideal client is because everything is going to depend on that because you're looking at what problems can you solve for them? What problems are they experiencing? And then it's much easier to determine what is the what is the topic that's going to create a lot of self-interest, and how can you position that in a way that there's curiosity for them to read more? That's what the headline will help you accomplish, right? Creating that self-interest and curiosity. And then how are you going to take it to the next level? So why don't we talk about that? You've got a great invitation, you're attracting people to a good location. You mentioned the location, and tell me some of the best locations that you've seen right now, specific restaurants, or because you mentioned steakhouses, right? Can you name
Yes, the
some?
steak is easy, right? Just yeah. So it's one of those things that just because when you start getting into the other realms, right? So I've had an advisor that tried to do Indian food, which I have no problem with Indian food. I absolutely love it. But it is one of those things, once you get out of the steak and potatoes, which the vast majority of the people like, then it becomes harder to capture increase the interest for, or then the desire for people to come in and attend, right? If they think that, yeah, I'm just not a fan of curry, which is unfortunate for them, they're not going to come, right? But if I know it's a steakhouse, I know that, hey, if I'm trying to eat healthy, they've got salads. I could do a nice wedge. If I'm trying to eat as much red meat as possible, obviously steakhouse, I'm good. If I'm trying to eat, white meat only, they've got chicken options. So I know what I'm going to get. There's an expectation. So as far as the best options to go to is I'm trying to appeal to the masses, right, and appeal to them. So some of the best results I've ever seen are the most popular restaurants in town, or the newest restaurants in town. So we were in Greensboro, we had this great restaurant, and unfortunately it didn't last. But there was a guy that he came in, a phenomenal chef, just absolutely phenomenal, and he was one of those that I like to experiment with traditional dishes, right? So squid ink pasta, just a little bit of a twist, but it's still pasta. So he had all of the basic options, but then it was a different thing. And it was a new restaurant. It was close to downtown, had decent parking. All of these things that I'm mentioning are on purpose, right? We have to let people come in. They have to be able to get there. They have to know where it is. They have to be interested in actually going. So the new places are great options, but you have to go test it out. And I'm sure you could maybe grab a team member by the arm and drag them in there for some nice food. So that's you have to test it. Or you can go with the standbys, right? Fleming's is one of the ones that we used to go to a lot. Uh, Not because I'm a big fan of Fleming's over Ruth's Chris, or necessarily a specialized steakhouse for the area, but because I know they have private rooms, right? Because you got to think, when you're on the location and you're speaking, you need for people to be able to hear you, especially those in the audience that are of an age where they're not hearing isn't as good, right? Maybe their hearing aids aren't picking up just your voice only; it's picking up the extra noise throughout the room, especially the clinking of dishes and loud talking that might be nearby. Laughter really interrupts things because of the tone and pitch. So you have to make sure that it's going to be a private room. And in my experience, maybe your town is different. This is why you have to go to the location and see. Ruth's Chris had more of the sliding doors, or maybe around a corner kind of a thing was their private room. I found the noise carried, and it was too tough. But in Fleming's, it was a closed off door that was its own room. Like, you walked up a couple of steps and it was its own room sitting there. And I've seen Fleming's restaurants in several cities, and they're similar. I also know that if you go through a company like Leading Response to coordinate your seminars and advertise for the seminars, they have a deal with Fleming's to go ahead and schedule it and coordinate the timing and all that for you. So, and I think they even get you a discount.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, great. That's very helpful. So you've gotten people to show up at your event. You picked a nice location, good lighting, easy for everybody to be able to access it. Your audience is there. How many people do you want at your event?
Yeah, it's always a tough question, right? Because you have to have enough that you're going to make it worth it. Because typically, what we see, or with those that are doing exactly what we say in every aspect of this, is they're getting 50% of the attendees to set an appointment. Now, if I have 10 people in the room, that typically means that I have four households, 4 to 5 households. In 4 to 5 households, that means I have two appointments. Is that enough to make up for the costs of time and money that you've spent on this event? So what we've seen, because also if you go too big, it's really hard to do one of the keys in your presentation, which is engage everybody, if I have more than 25 people in the room.
Yeah.
So that's about the max we want. Anywhere from between 18 to 25 is what I've seen be successful as far as an ROI goes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, good. And then, not everybody is a master presenter. I'm sure there are some on here that are wondering if there's some advisors or team members on here thinking, well, could I do seminars? It could be a good growth opportunity, but am I a good presenter? Or could I actually make this turn out? I don't think everybody has to be a master presenter to succeed in seminars. What do you think are the 3 or 4 most important things to keep in mind when giving a presentation, though?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it does come down to this because I often when I talk to advisors and we're troubleshooting their seminar and we're talking through it, that's usually the first go-to excuse. Like, look, I'm not getting appointments. But I've never been a great presenter. Like I get nervous or what. All of us get nervous. I've given thousands of presentations, and I get a little bit of a butterfly thing in the stomach, which is kind of fun before the presentation. It happens. It's fine. The advisor that I primarily worked with who gave the presentations, right before the presentation, he'd start sweating. And then as he got going, it would stop. It was just a thing, right? It happens to all of us. But the key here, the great presenters, in fact, one of the best seminar presenters I've ever seen, and watching his seminar presentation, I would say, having gone to Toastmasters, I would say he probably checks the box on all the things you shouldn't do in a presentation as far as standing, posture, how you speak, how you gesture, and all that stuff. And yet, he has one of the best appointment ratios out there, and was able to make these seminars phenomenal because he has 4 things involved, right? And these are the keys. So, very first thing, know your material cold.
Mhm.
And by that, I mean, is if you're giving a presentation and you have the heckler, which you will have the heckler, they're always there, and they don't mean to necessarily, some do. Most of them don't. Most of them just want to show in the room that, hey, look, I'm knowledgeable too. I can Google things. That's great, right? Let them speak. But if they speak and you interact with them, I need to be able to know exactly when and how to get right back into my presentation and move on, because everybody else in the room needs to stay engaged. If I start having a one on one, so in other words, if y'all were here and I just sit there talking to Stephanie, y'all would stop, right? Number two, so very first off, know your material cold, memorize it. We have great ways of doing that. We have great ways of walking through it. The teams that I've helped with their presentations, we actually practice it together and going through those to make sure it goes, which brings the number 2 thing, practice your presentation. I know you're good. I know you're smart. I know you know this material. Practice it,
Mhm.
right? You have to know exactly how you sound, the cadence, the how fast you go. Everything has to be down to a T in order for you to be able to test this out, right? Maybe you talked too fast, like I do. Maybe you talk too slow, right? Either way, we need to be able to test it out, practice it until you are, and with others, right? Do it in front of your team members, a spouse, but practice the presentation as much as you possibly can so that it's just second nature and you can come right back into it. The third piece of the seminars is, again, coming back to my point, begin with the end in mind. Yes, you are offering to provide information. You have to provide education at the seminar in order for people to feel that it was a benefit and that you are an educator. You are a uniquely qualified guide for them. So you have to educate, but at the same time, the purpose of your seminar is to get them in front of you for an appointment so that you can take this further, right? That's the point, right? Is for you to become their guide. Say that throughout the seminar, right? If people are asking me questions, hey, well, what would you say about this particular situation? What if the spouse, this is their second marriage and they have a disabled kid? How would you structure that Social Security? You know what? That is a great question, Bob. And it's one that we'll actually discuss in your overall retirement plan when we sit down together. But just to give you a brief answer, there's a lot of different ways of looking at that. This and maybe give a brief synopsis of your thought, and then move on. But notice I popped in there when we sit down and meet for your retirement income discussion. That's what we're going to discuss. Push that out there often, right? And on that note, y'all stay to the end, right? The very end of this, you will get an amazing offer of that booklet. It does give all of this stuff written out in a form that allows you to see, okay, what are the different aspects of this and how can I do it? Plus, all you have to do is say in order to get that wonderful booklet, you just have to say, look, like I want an analysis. And a member of our team can go over that with you and analyze, okay, well, what different channels are you using? How can we troubleshoot your seminars and what can we do to help you make sure they're profitable? So do stick to the end for that. That is the purpose, right? But
Absolutely.
then, final thing with your seminar presentation that's necessary is engage, right? This is not me standing up in front of the room talking at people. Each person in that room is a person with a history, a past, and a future that you are hopefully going to be a part of. Keep that in mind as you're interacting with them. Memorize their names. It's one of the first things Bill taught me when he taught us back way back in the day, Stephanie, about presenting. Right, get to know people's names. Shake their hand at the door, greet them, say hello, look at their names, make sure you memorize it. Tie that name to something silly, big, some form of long-term memory so that you can remember it. Use their names. And as you're interacting with them and using those names and talking to them, if you see somebody that's sitting in the corner that seems to be interested but isn't raising their hand or nodding or interacting like all the others, call them out. It's not a big deal, right? Ask them a particular question. Or in particular, what I love is the attention getting activities at the beginning of a presentation. Have everybody stand up and say, okay, now sit down if you have fewer than one grandkid, right? And go through that until the last person standing, and we can all cheer for them because they have lots of grandkids. It's some form of interaction. So engage your audience, get them involved, get them talking. You shouldn't, if you go through a whole presentation and nobody said anything, you failed.
Great points. Thank you. And speaking of that, we do have a question. Scott asks, do you have a separate presentation that focuses on running successful webinars? Uh, Go ahead.
No, I was going to say no. And here's the thing. So all of the different aspects that we're talking about apply to webinars. It's just the numbers are different, right? Um, there are some different aspects to it also. So with a webinar, you can do a lunch webinar. In fact, for business owners, that often is a good time that I'm seeing to catch attention. You have to keep it to a half hour or less, whereas a seminar, your presentation is going to be 45 minutes or so, and hour and a half to 2 hour time frame you have them in the room. But keep it to a half hour or less. Very similar to how we run webinars, have an offer where they can fill out a questionnaire and get something to download for free. It's a great way, number one, to provide the stuff that they need, just like this thing is going to be for you, but also gives you a chance to gather information and allow you to potentially help them further, which again is our purpose here too. The final piece on webinars, though, that is the key is you have to get mass numbers. So invite everyone, right? So you need a big list. You need to be out there on social media promoting it. You need to have ads out there for it. You need to be going to your clients and asking them to bring friends. Go to your strategic partners or COIs, ask them to bring people to your webinar. Because here's the key with webinars, of your registrants, now, as far as numbers of how many we invite versus how many say they're going to come, we don't have that. It varies a lot and it's really hard to tell, right? If I have, for example, an ad out there, I can tell clicks and other things, but I can't tell how many people saw that and then went to my website and registered there. So we don't have that data. But what we do have is once they've registered, only about 40% on average of those registered will show up to your webinar. So you got to think number wise, you got to have a lot. And then from there, of the 40% that show up, between 30 to 35% might actually come in for an appointment down the road. And that's the best practice numbers I'm seeing. So that again is another layer of numbers, right? So if I'm at 30% of those attending of the 40% that said they were going to come, yeah, I'm getting into few at this stage. So those that are running webinars that I've seen do best with clients bringing friends. Those that have done it with the ads and had people attending that way have seen some success. Obviously, costs are a little lower, although the ads can put out some cost out there depending upon where you place them and all. But the costs are lower, but the time is more, and the numbers that come out of it are less. But Everything else I'm saying is key. If not stepped up, right? Your presentation has to be perfect, because instead of interacting physically where we can stand close to each other, where I can shake your hand, I'm staring at a camera and you are a black screen and maybe a name on a list to the right. So in order to interact, we have to have a different thing. So I hope that helps, Scott. It's the problem with webinars is that there's not a lot beyond seminars to cover its own piece, which is why we tend to kind of lump them together in our presentations.
Thank you, Matt. And thanks, Scott, so much for your question. We really appreciate it. I want to add a couple things to what Matt had shared too. First, to emphasize, what I've seen is that inviting clients, their friends, family members, existing prospects who already have a relationship with you, strategic partners, and their clients. That's what's consistently getting the most attendance, engagement, and webinars definitely can help increase your conversion with existing prospects in your pipeline, because it gives them a chance to build more credibility with you and more trust as you're educating them on more and more topics they need to be considering regarding their finances.
Yes.
So webinars can be very complementary. I would look at it as more of a hybrid growth strategy between relationship marketing and mass marketing. Um, Probably even start it with clients and prospects and then see if you need to do more from there. And
Mm.
that's one of those channels that we can dig into further when we do the growth potential analysis after this webinar. So make sure you fill out that survey and request a growth potential analysis. I do have a webinar recording on how to make webinars successful, but again, with more of a focus toward clients, prospects, and strategic partners being the main attendees. So
Yeah.
thanks again, Scott. All right, Matt. So we've talked a lot about the presentation. It's not the only thing that's important to focus on during the event, of course. In fact, as with many other marketing channels, it's all about the little things, right? What have you noticed as the little things at the event that increase the possibility of success?
Yeah, there's a lot. So I'm kind of a stickler for the little things. I found when we were doing seminars, the night of was a massive stress, I guess, with just because all the little things I was worried about, like the clink of a fork on a plate. I was like, man, is that too much? Should I talk to the wait staff about that and all those things? But what it really boils down to is like you can manage, try to manage for all of this stuff, but you're just going to stress yourself out. There are three big things that I've found that if you focus on these three things during the seminar, these three little things, then that helps. As long as your presentation's there, everything else is there, these three things will be big. Number one is the report card, right? How you distribute it and then how you collect it is very important. What I've found is that having the report card already on the table and maybe within the packet of materials isn't as good as having a team member distribute it when it's time, right? And having people run that way. And it's partly because what I found is that you'll have some people in the room that fill it out first thing. Those are usually the A students, right? They're the ones that, when they're handed a report or anything, they're quickly filling it out and getting it all done really fast. Um, cool, except for now their feedback is practically useless if the presentation hasn't even started yet and they're grading you on how well you did. So save it to the end, right? And then hand it out and then make sure you collect it. This is not a, hey, just leave your report cards on the table and have a great night. This is, I'm going to go around and collect it. Gives you another opportunity to talk to them. And it gives you another opportunity to interact. And it's another point of, hey, no, actually, I do need that report card from you. So I've had people collect it at the doors. That can work. The problem, though, is once people are heading towards the door mentally, they've exited. And so it's a little bit harder to have decent conversations. So what I've seen done that works really well is dessert comes out. A lot of people order it to go because nobody, for some reason nowadays, likes eating chocolate cake in front of other people. But you can have that dessert delivered, and then at that time with coffee, and you can wander around and have conversations and talk to folks. Announce that, hey, we're going to stick around for a minute while we have dessert and coffee and we can chat. And if you have any side questions about anything we've discussed today, and then just go and start talking to people. And it's a great way of collecting those report cards. So that's number one, is get the report cards. Number two, and this is actually an after event, you need a team member there. If you don't have any team members, ask a spouse or a good friend to join you. Their job is to sit in the room and watch, just like yours is. As you're talking to people and as you're giving your presentation, keep an eye on everything that's going on and what's happening. How are people reacting? went to this seminar, and it was this moment where they were talking about in particular the attack strategy having to do with life insurance, I think is what it was. But very quickly the spouse leaned over and said something to her husband. Never raised her hand, never said anything else, but leaned over and said something that was noted. Maybe they were super interested in it, maybe they were the exact opposite, but it was noted, right? Look, so and so leaned over and talked to her husband at this moment. Gather that information throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, before we maybe grab drinks or head home, and then try to remember the next morning, do a brain dump. Take everybody in the room, take all those moments, everything you saw, the person that interacted, that was the heckler, the person that raised their hand and asked questions about a particular subject. Make a note of that, because when you're doing your follow-up phone calls, that helps with that information. It's the same thing like when you are in a webinar and you're asking questions and people are jumping into the chat and asking questions. Keep that chat, right? That's going to be critical for your follow-up and making sure that hey, look, like, people have questions about this and maybe this is something we can help with. So Scott, when you fill out that thing, we're going to keep that in mind. So when you fill out that questionnaire and do the growth analysis, we'll say, hey, yeah, Scott, let's talk about the webinars with you. So that's the piece, right? So keep that information. Do the brain dump immediately ending your presentation once everybody's left the room. And then the third key thing is the food, right? If you do serve food during, I've seen different types. What it really comes down to is you, right? I've seen some that are absolutely adamant that nobody is eating while you're presenting because of the clink of the fork. People are distracted. People are talking about the food, and they're adamant about that. Personally, when we did our seminars, I liked the meeting. I thought it was fun, right? Because then you can interact. That's a point of interaction. How's the steak, Bob? That's the great thing to do. I didn't care about the noise. I can talk loud. I'm also 6'8", so I tend to stand out in the room. So I can talk to people. So others may not want to do that or may not be able to do that, and that's fine. Go with your strength as far as serving food. Don't let anybody else, I don't care what coach or consultant says it, don't let them dictate how you do it. Try it, right? Sure. Let's try all the different options to see what works best, but do what works best for you. Then have a nice conversation, not just with the host or the person, the event coordinator for that restaurant. Have a conversation with your head waiter. And if the other waiters can be involved, great. This should happen right before the event, before people are going to show up, which is usually 15 to 20 minutes early. Talk to them. Say, hey, I really appreciate it. Here's some key points. Here's some things to watch out for. Here's what I'm allowing for attendees to order or not order. Have that conversation. You will get them on your side. I found that when you do that, they're more respectful and they try to be quieter. So definitely have that conversation before start.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Um, I want to talk a little bit more about the follow up, but before we jump into that, I'm curious, with everybody attending today, for everybody here, who is running seminars right now? And what topics are you seeing get the most engagement for your seminars? If you have a few minutes, jump in. Now we'll move on to the next part, but I'd like to see that and then we can share that summary with the rest of the group too. Love to hear what's working right now. Okay, awesome. So obviously, we're beginning with the end in mind. You've got this presentation, you're working to get appointments. There are some critical activities that have to be done for follow up to make sure that you get those appointments with the ideal clients that are attending or potential clients that are attending and get them to convert. What are some of the most impactful follow up steps that need to occur, Matt?
Yeah, well, number one, you have to call within 24 hours. So that's part of the reason, not just because we see your best results as far as attendance on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, but it's also because if you do it on those days, you have another business day after where you can follow up and call and connect with them. But you have to try to reach them within 24 hours. I don't care if they requested an appointment or not. I'm calling within 24 hours, trying to remind them, bring them back into that moment of where they were and how they felt in that seminar, and especially how they felt about you as far as trustworthiness and whether or not you're a good guide. But bring them back into that moment within 24 hours and schedule that appointment and go for the appointment then. For everybody else in that call, if they say, "Hey, yeah, you know what, I'm good. I don't need any help," or one I often get is the, "Well, we don't really have a decision made to make right now. Planning on retiring, whatever, future date." Great. In my brain dump, I've already logged maybe some information about them. If I haven't, then I'll gather it. But if I have, I'm going to use that information to say, well, great. We like to keep in touch with everybody to make sure that they're well informed and well prepared for those moments. We would like to send out information to you. Would you be okay if we sent that out on these different topics? Most people say, yes, that's fine. So you do, right? Send it out immediately and then follow that up. And then if they still aren't ready for an appointment or not ready to move forward, if they told you it was a different date, that's fine. I'm going to follow up that information and say, does that make sense? Is that about what you were looking for? Great. Why don't I just send you something on a monthly basis, something I think of interest that's going to touch on this topic, or others that are relevant for you? Does that make sense? And then I'm going to keep them in my drip message, where I'm going to send them a message every single month that might be on a topic of their interest. Sometimes that might be a holiday message. Sometimes it might be a educational piece, might be a market update piece, whatever it might be, but it's going to be something that might be a topic of their interest. And then every 3 months during that time, I'm going to call them and profile more. I'm going to ask more questions. And what I've told people is, look, pick five. More than that, and you're grilling them. Less than that, and you're not gathering as much information as you can in each call. So ask five different questions to really try to pull in that information, get to know them better, understand what might be able to help them better prepare for their future. So you have to further qualify and gather data, and then constantly be in touch with them as the expert, as that unique guide that can help them overcome that problem that got their attention in the first place.
That's a very thorough follow-up process. I love it. It follows what is outlined in the Seminar Success Zone guidebook that you'll get in the goodie bag at the end of the webinar, or yeah, at the end of the webinar when you fill out the survey. Um, I'm curious, as you followed the process by the book, what were your statistics? How many people did you usually get attending? How many setting appointments? How many became clients?
Yeah, so the standards back in the day was that first off, you looked for a 0.8 to 1% response rate, which is still, it's a 0.6 to 1% is still can be very successful to fill a room. So that's what we were looking for, and we tend to get up to close to the 1% response rate when we were doing it. For the guys that I'm working with now and the ladies that I work with now, they are getting about 1%. And really what I tell people is, look, delve deep into that headline, right? So make sure that that is a topic of interest for your ideal client. But then once those people said they were going to attend, we had a 90+% attendance ratio. We say 80% plus is usually a good range to go for. You have to do confirmations, and it's not the confirmations of, kind of the insulting confirmations, like I say, like where, hey, I'm really hoping you're still attending. Hey, do you remember you signed up for this? I find those to be a little bothersome. So I think it's much better to go the route of, hey, by the way, I just wanted to let you know, when you get to the restaurant tonight, you're going to head straight, right? Go past the host desk, and off to the left is the hallway that's going to get you down to our rooms. Or, hey, tonight, remember, like, we have a choice between steak, chicken, and veggies. Which would you prefer? Whatever, right? Confirm details of the event, not, hey, are you still coming? But that makes sure that you get a high number of people showing up. So we usually had over 90% show up. There's always the random sick person or whatever, which is always horrible. Then once they got to the seminar, usually what I'm seeing with my top guys, it's 60 to 70% or so that are scheduling an appointment or requesting an appointment on average. Occasionally you'll have one that's like a 40%, and sometimes you'll have 80%. But average is you're shooting in there. We say 50% or plus is a profitable number. The next, once people said they're coming in for an appointment, pretty much all of them came. We got all of them to come with our confirmations, our phone calls to make sure that they showed up. Our offices were in a great location, had great parking. It was easy to get to, so it's easy to get people to come for that. You should have 80% or more of the people saying they're coming to an appointment actually show up. Then of those coming in for an appointment, and this is a totally different topic, we usually had 60 to 70% of the people that came in for an appointment became a client. My top guys are in that upper 60 percentile that are if they come to a seminar and then they come in for an appointment, they become a client. We say 50% or plus, you're doing pretty good, and that can be a profitable seminar. If you're not in those numbers as far as closing, which obviously seminar attendees is very different than referrals. So if you're just starting up seminars and you're like, hey, Matt, I've got a 80% close ratio with referrals, that's great. That's fine. It's very different, right? Somebody that was told to work with you versus somebody that showed up to eat a steak, it's a different number. So make sure, as long as your numbers are there, great. If not, we have a whole other program for that, asset accelerator that I teach, a whole process for that, different call. But like I said, we were 60s, 70s. And then those that didn't request an appointment or come for an appointment right off the bat, usually over a period of a year and a half or so, we'd get another 20% of those people to come in for an appointment down the road. Um, so that's those were our numbers, and that's usually what I see even now from those that are doing everything right.
Okay, awesome. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
I would say also, thinking back to Scott's point about webinars, I would suspect if you're filling your webinars with clients, their loved ones, and strategic partners, their clients and prospects who are already familiar with you, that your close rate on the leads that actually do come in for appointments would be higher. We should expect in the higher range, like that 80-90% plus, like
Yeah.
you would from referrals as a whole. Okay.
Definitely, and on that too, just to give that number, because I gave the response and show up rates, but and everything and appointment ratios, but the what I have seen as far as number of people when you're doing it with a mix of clients, strategic partners, and then their friends and referrals, usually on average, what I'm seeing is between 5 to 10 of the attendees are prospects, and so then of those numbers, we're getting four or so appointments, 4 to 5 appointments from there, depending upon how many, right? Because obviously clients sometimes request appointments too. But that being said, you can kind of, just so as you're planning out your numbers and you're saying, okay, well, how do I fill a seminar? And you're getting 30 to 40 people in a webinar. That's what you can kind of expect down the road.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Mhm.
So you mentioned over, the coming months and years, getting about another 20% of those to becoming clients. How did you systematize all of that follow up to ensure that you got that number?
Yeah, so every single person is pegged with a quarterly contact. So if I contacted them today and spoke with them, and it's 23 hours after the presentation, I'm going to contact them again 3 months from now, and just check in, see if the information they're getting is still appropriate, see if there's been any changes in their lives that we need to be aware of, and then delve in. Hey, I've got just a few quick questions for you, and I'm going to ask them some more profiling questions. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about your family? Tell me a little bit more about your business. Tell me a little bit more about your plans in retirement. Exactly what are you planning on doing? So I'm going to delve deep and try to understand them better. Uh, Bill taught us this lesson way back in the day, and it was manage their money, become their advisor before you manage their money and become their advisor. And that's what you do on those phone calls. Be their advisor, act that part, and naturally, when the money comes or when they're something happens and they need to make a change, you're the first person they go to. But the calls are critical in that. Finally, you need to be in front of them all the time. Ken Stone, we did a great webinar with him recently, and he had this saying that I absolutely love, and I've been using it since, and that is that I like to hear them hear from me when they're not hearing from me, and that's what the letters will do. That's what any emails you send out will do. That's what your social media posts will help do. If you're creating any video content, that helps with that. But let them hear from you without you having to make that phone call too. And it needs to be at least on a monthly basis. And it's pretty easy to trigger that going forward too.
Okay, awesome. Did you ever host webinars as a follow-up? So let's say somebody didn't close at a seminar within a few months after. Did you ever include webinars as a part of your follow-up communication strategy?
So we didn't because at our firm back in the day, because this was pre-COVID, the webinar thing wasn't as nearly as popular.
Mm,
Um, but we did a conference call. So we did a monthly conference call where everybody was invited, especially prospects and strategic partners, where we would give a brief update on everything that's going on in the market, things we were watching. And so just again, positioning ourselves as the expert. Um, Nowadays, yes, I have lots of advisors that are using webinars to again put that out there. Just to your point from earlier when we were answering Scott, is that um, that's great for ongoing expertise demonstration and education for clients, prospects, strategic partners, connections, everybody. And then
mhm.
it also is great for taking clips, right? I can pull out little segments of that presentation, depending upon your compliance, get it approved, post it out to social media. If I had a particular moment where I was crushing it in that presentation, take that clip and put it out there on social media, let people see it, call people, call clients, tell people to, hey, could you go look at that video on social media? Just tell me what you think about it and maybe react on social media. Because then that helps it show up in further feeds. But use every last aspect of that, right?
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great strategy. I think really to emphasize, you're just trying to continue educating and building trust on any communication channel you can. And
100%.
it's okay and in fact encouraged to combine multiple strategies. So seminars can be one prong of your overall growth strategy, but you need to have multiple to really consistently reach your growth goals and rapidly grow, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Rebecca just asked a question. What calls should be made by the advisor versus the office assistant?
This is a great question, and I get this one often. Um, Here's the key: how good is your office assistant, right? Because if they're calling up and, like, for example, if we were to call y'all and say, "Hey, thanks for attending our webinar today, and we hope that you'll come in for," you're done, right? You're like, okay, yeah, this isn't the team for me. But if we have, you talk to Stephanie, who's a very dynamic, very good person, and has the answers and is able to actually converse with people very well, talking to you and going through this growth analysis with you. Uh, yeah, of course, people are going to want that because there's expertise, there's reliance, and there's just a comfort level there too. So if your person making those calls can deliver that, excellent. Yes, they should be the ones doing it, right? They have the time and capability. You should be in meetings or have your calendar open for meetings you'll set in that seminar. Um, but if they can't, and they're going to eventually, you do it, they listen in. Their job is to write the script of what you're saying, and so that they can repeat it. And until they demonstrate their capability of doing it, now, sorry, you have to make those calls.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And thank you for your question, Rebecca. Now, if you're at that point or in that situation with your seminar processes and you'd like to get help training, advisors on your team with their presentation skills or your team members on doing the follow-up calls, that is a part of something we can help with in our coaching and all of our support solutions to help you systematize seminars and turn them into basically asset generating machines. Um, so a couple of other points I wanted to share. I'd asked earlier what topics are being used right now successfully, and Ian said lots of Social Security and Medicare as they are evergreen and top of mind.
Mhm.
Ian, I'm curious what area you're in, and if you're still on and can answer that, that would be great. Matt, I'm also curious, are you seeing seminars working better in some areas than others?
Yes. Um, there are so many. I really hate the statement of seminars are played out in my area because it's not true. The key though is that, again, it's that number one point is capturing attention, and that is harder to do. If I had this one advisor that was in Virginia, and they were advertising for a seminar at this particular restaurant, and the advisor himself got an invitation for the same night at the same restaurant from another advisor. And so, yeah, you're in a sea of people. It's going to be a little bit tougher to capture attention, especially if you're doing a topic that everybody's doing, right? So I love that, Ian. I 100% agree with you. Social Security, Medicare are evergreen, which is why I kind of lump them into that retirement income topic of the three topics that are always possible. Um, Change the way you advertise for it, change the way that you talk about it, change up the headline so that you stand out, capture that attention. But that being said, it is a little tougher in certain areas. Big metropolitan areas are a little bit harder because you got to think about location and getting to that location for
Mhm.
all of your potential attendees. And then you also have to look at your competition. It tends to be a lot more. So they are harder. Not saying played out. I want to make sure that's clear. It just means you have to delve deeper into it. Um, but yeah, great. I love that you're doing those because those do work still.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Ian. And Ian also said, so he's in East Bay of Northern California, which interestingly, I was speaking with an advisor recently who was questioning whether or not seminars even work in that area, right? Um, It oftentimes comes down to the right topic, the right audience, all of the factors tying together synergistically, making sure you have a strategy that's going to make it all work together. So, East Bay of Northern California, performing seminars and webinars out there remains steady outside of summer months. And I think that's another interesting point. What time of year is it best?
Yeah. So let me throw this something in on this one, Stephanie, because I know you have good answers on this too. This is a question I often get. In fact, I get some people questioning me, and I absolutely love people questioning me because that gives me more data. So please, test it, right? If I say something and you're like, go try something different. If it gets you great results, let me know. That gives me more information. But and that's usually what I get, how I get all this data. What we say is the best time frames to do seminars are spring and fall. You avoid the holidays, you avoid summer. That's the standard, right? You also avoid a lot of people avoid April just because there's a lot of stuff coming at people then, and it's a little bit tougher. But that being said, that's the standard. I've had people that have been since COVID. It's been weird. I have people in certain areas, and this kind of comes back to your point about are areas doing better than others. Some areas you can just throw an invite out for a steak dinner and it doesn't really matter what your headline is, people are coming, right? Areas like California, New York, Florida, those are areas where you got to have a good headline. You better stand out if you're going to get people coming out to that. But and clearly, Ian, you're doing a good job, so that's awesome. But test it out. Those areas, summer months, I probably would stay away from because it's going to be an expensive test, but you're welcome to do it. Um, Usually, what we see are those spring and fall, but I have some in those areas that it always works that they run them through the summer and they still get enough. It does dip a little bit response rates, but they still get enough to fill a room and make it profitable. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, Matt. And also, if you think about timing and an overall strategy for growth, if you're new to seminars and you're attending this today because you're wondering if it could be a good fit for your strategy, uh, Matt mentioned that you really want to master your presentation, practice, practice, practice. So, getting a great presentation right now, like over the next month, fine tune it, and then practice for 2 or 3 months before jumping into them in the fall could be great timing to launch this strategy.
Yeah, well, and that's on that point too. So one of the things that we do, and I'm sure you'll talk with this as an option for those as you go through the growth analysis, but is that I can come out to your office. So I had a team that we did this with, and it was a few months before we were actually going to run the seminar. We started talking because we were talking through seminar, like what exactly were we going to talk about. We actually pulled their presentation together from scratch. But I've done it where you've purchased a seminar and we've just modified it slightly to fit you. But we created one from scratch, headlines, invitation, everything from the start. Worked through practicing it, creating their presentation, writing up their bullet points, having them write it. They recorded themselves giving the presentation and sent it to me. I went to their office the day before the seminar and we went through and they gave me their presentations again. I talked through like, oh, here's some things we need to watch for. We then drove to the restaurant, had a meal, went through the location, talked to the wait staff and everything to kind of prepare. And I did all that so they could see exactly how it's done. And then I was there for the seminar. I watched it, helped with the brain dump, and then afterwards was there for the phone calls to make sure that we got that. And we hit being their first seminars ever run in years. They still hit all the numbers that we recommend. Usually, it takes people a bit to test it out to get up to those numbers, but we were able to knock it out right at the beginning. So it is something that we can do. If you're just looking at starting it up, that's something we can help with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to honestly, I was extremely impressed at them hitting those numbers right out the gates. I know that these processes work, but oftentimes it does take some trial and error to smooth out the kinks. But just so everyone has this for reference, if you hit the statistics in the success zone that's outlined in our goodie bag, which actually I'm going to pull that up right now so you have a chance to fill out the survey and make sure you get that goodie bag. But if you hit all of your statistics in the success zone, what that could result in, let's say you're targeting investors with 500,000 investable assets or more, with a set of seminars, like a Tuesday, Thursday night option with the same presentation, All the stats in the success zone should generate about 3.5 million in new assets within a few months post seminar. And I can run through all those numbers with you specifically for your own target market when we do the growth potential analysis. So as you're filling out that survey, you'll come to a question that basically you get an option to choose a growth potential analysis. Go ahead and fill that out and I'll help you calculate your numbers. But that said, to host your first set of seminars cost 8 to 10,000 depending on your area and exactly the details of your seminar process, and get 3.5 million. There's huge profit to be had and a very rapid way to scale your business with seminar marketing strategies. So we'd be happy to help you with that. That said, I realize we're bumping up on the end of our time here. So I just want to say I really appreciate all of your time. Thank you, Matt, for your time, your expertise, and sharing your advice. Um, Thank you, everyone, for your time as well. And we hope to see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Yeah, everyone.